I am unashamed. What about you?
So this is our I think it's our fourth podcast that we've been missing Jase. He's been ill, and so we're hoping he gets better. So in his place, in his actual chair, we have Gordon Dasher, one Gordo. This is Zach's dad, by the way, the sire of Zach Dasher. And but you're in Jase's chair, so Gordon, you're going to have to be argumentative, stubborn, and interrupt me and Dad a lot.
So be myself.
Just be yourself. That's why I got you to replace him. It's just a natural, It's just a natural instinct. But yeah, so welcome Gordo into the Unashamed
Thank
layer. And it is because of your son and the whole family that's we're able to do this. We started a production company, which is weird because, Dad, we started the production company, Zach and I did, after he'd run for Congress and lost, but had made all these contacts. And so he wound up making contacts with, like, Steve Bannon and what was the other guy's name? Dave Bossy. And so these are all guys that were wound up being, like, heavily involved in Trump campaigns, and, even Bannon was in the administration. And so they had this idea about doing this movie. It was kind of a fundraiser for Citizens United, which is their group they were with. And it was called Torchbearer. And so Zach, he wrote most of it. I think then they had a couple other writers kind of help with it. But we actually made a movie in Europe with those guys. We spent 2 weeks over there. We were in Athens, we were in Paris, we were in Auschwitz in Poland, Normandy we were at. So it was really interesting. And so I hadn't mentioned it in a while, but I want to mention to our podcast listeners, you can still find it. I think you can find it on Amazon Prime. And Apple, yeah. And so it's called Torchbearer, but it's a fantastic, what would you call it? It's a fantastic look at what happens with civilizations that forget God, or turn to where the only the government or the emperor or whatever it was is your leader, and it always ends in tyranny. Every time. I mean, they'll rise up some ideology, some whatever.
This election, we're on our way.
That's right, and it's the same stuff you're seeing again.
Who was it that said you can lose your freedom in one generation?
It's Reagan that said that.
Yep.
Yeah, that was Reagan that said that. And it's true. So we made this movie, and it was really great. The problem was we had imagined it being in theaters and, like Dinesh D'Souza stuff, really getting out there. But it all just kind of got buried in the Trump campaign, because this was in 2016 is when we were releasing it. The idea was we were going to put it out before the election and hopefully show this is the two pictures, from that. Then it was Clinton versus, President Trump. So it got lost, and though we thought, well, I don't know if the Almighty is going to ever use that one day. It's going to come back, but it's just so good. I'm thinking at some point that's going to be where a lot of people can see it, But I want
It's a brutal film.
It is. It's truthful.
It's brutal when empires collapse.
That's exactly right.
And another one.
And we're there, right?
We're there.
I mean, think about that. So we made that 4 years ago, but how prophetic is it for just 4 years later? And what you're seeing.
The same thing that we learned from history is it, and we went with lockstep right into it.
Oh, yeah. So what were you telling me?
There's no God, and then now all of a sudden Karl Marx is back.
Right.
And I mean, it looks like they're coming in.
Well, as we record this on the day after the election, I mean, we're in the midst. I don't know, this may air Friday, but it may be decided by then, but it looks doubtful because it looks like they're trying to find a way to steal those swing states, because you made an observation coming in here that every state that's under, hasn't reported yet are all Democrat-led, right?
That's it.
So, I mean, that's just by the way.
Coincidentally.
Yep, coincidentally.
So it's the same battle, but it's interesting because this is what I talk about in the movie. People would give themselves under this tyranny, and you're just thinking, why would you want to do that? And I see it with these lockdown states, I mean, through the coronavirus. It's just like, some people are fleeing. We had Ann and Phelim on. They had to come down here because they're like, we got to get out of this place because it's just not going to get any better. So,
and it's a theory that's been debunked at every turn. Every time they've tried to put it into practice, Marxism and socialism, it's failed miserably.
So do you think it's just because the evil one ultimately is when you look at the two high flyover looks about freedom versus tyranny, I mean, the evil one's got to have his hands all over it, right? So is it just because of him that gets it going again? Why does it keep coming back to this same thing that never works?
Because I think it's because it appeals to our baser nature.
Yeah.
I want stuff that I don't really have to make an investment in getting. I don't have to earn it. I don't have to pay for it. The government.
We'll take care of your student loan.
yeah.
We'll take care of your health care.
Right.
We'll be your nanny.
And they get a few years on them, or even before they get there, they die. I mean, it's like the government can take care of my health. They may give you a little temporary reprieve from time to time, but the 6-foot hole looms bigger with each passing year, and that's where everyone goes. It didn't. They can't help you. Not really.
What was Biden's line about health care? He said Trump says it's a luxury, maybe is what he said. He said, but I believe it's a right. It's
a right.
It should be in the Constitution, right? Could you imagine the founders if they would hear a speech like that today? If somehow you could just bring them forward and listen to that speech, they would be like, "What are you talking about?" I mean, a health care, a right?
What is health care?
Yeah, what is that? What do you? I mean, because these guys, you got wounded, somebody fixed you up right then.
If you got sick back then, they bled you.
Yes, exactly right.
That's what they did to George Washington. They bled him.
Yeah, which is amazing. So my point was, so we did this movie, and so Zach and I started our company, Restoration Productions, because we figured the movie would get out there and all these people would see it. And so then we wanted to be able to produce some things to go along with it, some follow-up and some teaching and things like that. And of course, the movie went nowhere, and so Zach and I started this business, and we were like, well, I guess that's all of that. So the business just sat there, doing nothing for 2 years. And then we got this opportunity about Blaze to do In the Woods with Phil, which, by the way, you can go to blazetv.com/unashamed and get that. But so we started producing that show. And then that opened the door to this podcast, which now we know that, I don't know, millions, however many people are listening. It's a lot. I mean, a lot of people are being blessed by it. And so Dad, Gordo, every week that goes by, somebody shows up here, usually in West Monroe or Monroe, because Dad's across the river. I want you guys to baptize me, or I want to learn more about Jesus. Or, last weekend I married a couple after they were baptized. So it's really cool the way that all worked out. And Zach and I had never had the personal vision for it, because this started for another reason. But I love it when God has a plan in mind that we don't know about yet, and then just kind of unveils it as it goes along, which is kind of
Pretty awesome.
Pretty neat. So Gordo was married to Jan. We've talked about her on the podcast. She's passed away about a year ago, isn't it? It's just a little over a year. And we've told you how great she was and all that, but I wanted Gordon to talk a little bit about her, because you were married to her a long time, and what it was like to come into the Robertson family. So Gordo was on Duck Dynasty. I guess your initial episode was the one that was about Mia, right? The family reunion thing. So they had Gordon. They put him in a pink. They wanted him to pink polo.
Yeah.
The producers did, so they could put him with Dad and basically have Dad throw him under the bus. What they didn't know is Gordon, Gordon stands his ground pretty good. That's one thing he learned about it. So do you remember that, Dad? Do you remember what you said on the show? I knew you would. So he looks at you, Gordo, and you got this pink shirt on, and he said, Gordon, he's got a look about him. You remember when he said that on the show? And then Gordon's like, I've got a look about me. Have you looked at yourself in the mirror? So it's
the other line to that was, you can tell he ain't from around here.
And my eyes, my eyes aren't real close together. I don't look inbred. Yeah, you can tell I'm not from around here.
So I will say the guys that made the show are pretty brilliant, because they were right. The contradiction scenes of Dad and Gordon were brilliant, because they were funny. I mean, you were laughing just because you were sitting in a duck blind with the pink shirt on. It was really funny. So I just wanted the audience to know that in case you missed that one. So what was it like coming into so how did you and Jan meet? Tell me a little bit about the beginning of it all, because it's been, I've even forgotten that. I was just a lad.
Yeah, it was 1974. I'd been floundering around, and long story, but I got an opportunity to come to the seminary that was at our church here, and I'd never heard of White's Ferry Road Church. I'd never heard of West Monroe, but I wound up there. And
so you came to go to school.
I came here to go to school.
Okay.
And I was at a mixer out at the camp, and My version is I was surrounded by young women. And what's my version?
Were they serenading you and have palm branches?
They were offering me casseroles and candy.
I will say that I believe your version only because everybody at White Straight Road is always trying to get everybody single married.
Yeah,
that's their goal.
Well, your Aunt Jan, she saw me from afar and kind of ran the others off and laid claim to me. And I don't know. I think we dated 5.5 months before we got married. I told you on the way to the LSU game one time, I don't know if you remember or not, but I mean, I lucked out. I mean, there could have been mental illness in the family. Her brother could have been some obsessed duck hunter that ran a bar in Arkansas. I mean, how lucky did I get? You know, I didn't know any of the family. You're asking me what it was like. It was a culture shock. I'm telling you.
So you started in the fall of '74 in school. So here's what's interesting. I didn't really put this together. So Dad's not a Christian yet. This is still a year. He's a year out from being a Christian. And that summer, Jan drove up to camp session ended. She drove up to Junction City, Arkansas, and I loaded up in her car. And then she drove all night down to Houston, Texas, and picked up 2 of my cousins that live down there, and then drove back to camp to get us back for Sunday, which is when camp started. So my only experience at Camp Chioka, which now, of course, Willie and John Luke and all them run, all those years ago was because of Jam. Mm-hmm. And because she was willing to drive all night to get me and to get Jamie and David to come. And so, but that was right before she met you, because that was the summer of '74 is when that happened, which is interesting. And, of course, I didn't know any of that stuff. A year later, and we've talked about it a lot on the podcast, Jan boldly took Bill Smith, our preacher at the time. And by the way, you guys that are sending me all the Bill Smith stuff, the guy that's Bill Smith that's the preacher now, that's not him. Our guy's passed away. So a lot of you keep sending me emails about Bill Smith, but that's the wrong Bill Smith. So she takes him up there because she's convinced.
She took me first.
Oh, tell that.
She took me first, and I had been.
Oh, to introduce you to that.
To lead him to the Lord.
Ah.
But the problem with that is I'd been smoking dope and getting drunk a month before that. So when she took me, he basically just intimidated the fire out of me and ran me off. I mean,
you don't even remember that, do you, Dad? Isn't that funny? I never knew that.
I remembered it. I'm still wounded to this day by it.
So this would have been sometime in '75.
Fall of '74. Yeah.
It'd probably been the next year, though, right, when she tried to take you up there?
May have been. I don't know.
So I never knew that. So you weren't quite up for that task just yet. Yeah. And so, and by the way, Bill Smith wasn't either. Bill didn't want to go.
Right.
And look, in his defense, I've been put in the same boat for. Somebody will tell me, well, if you can just go and talk to them. I said, well, do they want to talk about God? Or are they at a point? And they're like, well, no, but I just think you can convince them. I was like, look, this thing is about turning yourself in. Like, you can't take somebody by captive for Christ. It has to be a situation where they're wanting to talk about it. So that first time it was an epic fail because Bill Smith came in, sat in the booth in the bar that we were running, Dad was running, and Dad's drinking his Budweiser beer or whatever, and he just listens and then basically just says, all right.
He blew it off.
Yeah, see you later, And Jan's passing out tracts according to the way Dad told it to the bar patrons, which I'm sure.
Can you see that?
I could definitely
see it.
I could definitely see it. Let's take a quick break. So one of our sponsors on the podcast, Scoremaster, it was interesting because we've talked about them before, and so when they sent me this copy, it said it almost crashed their website when so many people found out that the average person can gain 97 points to their credit score just by going and checking out what these guys have done. They've discovered an algorithm that super boosts credit scores, which is really good. So if you're refinancing your home, buying a car, applying for credit, say your credit is okay, you go to Scoremaster, and on average, these guys have had 61 points increase in less than 20 days. So it can help you a lot. Basically, if you raise it 61 points, you save $9,000 on a car loan. So it's important, especially for you young ones out there that are kind of just starting out and maybe your credit's not where it needs to be. So anyway, here's how you find out about these guys. You go to scoremaster.com/Phil. That's scoremaster.com/Phil. Just takes you a few minutes to enroll, add to your credit score, and save you some money. So, but it planted a seed, I guess, because a year later, with Mom and the 3 boys at the time gone, Dad finally got to that place, and we talked about a couple of podcasts ago that me and Zach and Jep all got to as well, where you're just like, okay, this is miserable. I mean, this life is not really what I want to do the rest of the way. And so then Dad he comes to West Monroe. Now his hat is in his hand, and he's like, I want to do something different. And so the same man who couldn't crack you in the bar booth was the one that shared the gospel with you for 3 straight nights.
Here's an interesting point. Since you brought it up, I was ready in case it ran by me. I could stop. Proverbs 19:21. Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. Now that's what the psalmist said. And from there, I just happened to see this yesterday. Isaiah 46, about verse 10. Check this out. I make known the end from the beginning, which is quite a statement.
Yep.
I make known the end, and that means of everything. I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times, what is still to come. I say, my purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please. He said, I've got full control of the whole thing. Well, you fast forward because that section of Scripture is the whole thrust of that, from Genesis 3:15 all the way to Matthew, a 5,300 by my count year stretch. Jesus is coming. Well, Jesus shows up. He walks on the earth. He dies on a cross, is buried and raised from the dead, spent 40 days to show them, I'm alive. What about it? They're like, whoa. He told us that. So Peter gets up, and the first thing out of his mouth, listen to this. Jesus of Nazareth was a man accredited by God to you by miracles, wonders, and signs, which God did among you through him, as you yourself know. This man, now listen how this reads, in lieu of Proverbs 19:21 and Isaiah 46. This man was handed over to you by God's set purpose and foreknowledge. He said, I see the end, having started from the beginning.
Right.
And you, with the help of wicked men, put him to death by nailing him to the cross, but God is raising from the dead. That's the first thing out of Peter's mouth. He said, God's purpose. So to your point about me and the beer joint and all that, at that point, I had no purpose.
Yeah.
And I'd never heard of the purpose God had in mind. By the way, you can read on from Acts 2, Romans 8:28. We look at little verses like that, but don't say, and everything works out for the good. In all things, God works for the good of those who he called according to his purpose.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you're lost, you get to looking around and you get to thinking, how do I fit into all this? And that's why all these suicides and all of that,
Sure.
they spin in their wheels. They just can't, they don't realize, they don't know what purpose they're on the earth.
That's right.
And that's why you see people get out in the street and,
Yep.
you know, and then somebody like the Apostle Paul says, yeah, I see them. They're senseless, faithless, heartless, and ruthless. You're like, man, what a bunch to deal with. No purpose.
Yeah.
They don't have any knowledge of God. So
Yeah, just think about if you woke up.
this was an example. I finally found purpose when I read what God's purpose was. I said, I was one that was called according to his purpose, but didn't even realize it.
Right. It sounds like you kind of had. You must have had a similar experience because you said just earlier in that you had not been living a godly life. Oh. So when you came to West Monroe, that was your transition as well, I guess, when you went to prison.
Everybody goes from ungodly to godly.
At some point. That's exactly right.
Or they die.
That's right.
But still, their knee will bow and their tongue will confess.
That's right.
Everybody does.
Even after. So that was your transition as well. I mean, from spiritually is when you came here and to go to school.
Right. I grew up in a tradition that valued performance, law based. You obey the rules, and so if you the key to salvation is you keep the rules. If you break the rules, then you're immediately out of the kingdom until you say a magic prayer and then you get put back in. So
get yourself cleaned up.
Yeah. So the result of that was I just was like under a constant state of condemnation because nobody can sustain that.
Right.
Nobody can live under that. Law always condemns. And I was just tired of it, but I thought maybe there's some other answer out there. I didn't know, and I look back at it now, I realize I wasn't even really guiding my own steps. I guess I could have resisted it, but I felt a real urge to come here, and it was an opportunity for me to, I looked at it then like it's an opportunity for me to get my act together. And I realize now it was an opportunity for me to meet God. And
Jan was a perfect vehicle to help that happen because Jan, unlike you or me or Dad, she
never went down that
she never went down the path. And we talked about it before when Zach was on here about, sin not being an advantage. Although some of us that live in very bad, sinful situations, we're empathetic to people. At the same time, I don't know about y'all, but I wouldn't want to go back and do all that again for any reason.
Me either.
And so, and Jan was a great example of that. She was not perfect, but she was a great spiritually led person.
Check this out. You see, we're telling about from where we were to where we are. Ephesians 1:9. And he, talk about God, known to us, he has made known to us the mystery of his will according to his good pleasure, which he purposed in Christ to be put into effect when the times will have reached their fulfillment. Think about it. He told the Galatians, when the time had fully come, in the days of the Roman Empire, God sent his son, born of a woman. You say every step was worked out. Till the times would have reached their fulfillment to bring all things in heaven and earth together under one head, even Christ. In him we were also chosen, not even realizing it, on what a thing that was. Having been predestined according to the plan of him who works out everything, listen, in conformity with the purpose of his will. You're like, every little step of one's life, in order that we who were the first to hope in Christ might be for the praise of his glory. You were included in Christ when you heard the word of truth. Smith brought it to me at the beer joint.
Yep.
And I was like, what? Well,
your heart wasn't open then.
Wasn't open then. He said, that's a mean man. He said, he said, his final words were to Jan. He told Jan, he said, he ain't ready yet. But Jan said, if you convert him, he'll win thousands. And Smith said, what? Jan said to Smith, you convert my brother, and he will bring thousands.
She had the vision for it.
To the Lord.
She saw it.
And Smith said, Smith said it kind of built the fire in him. Well, maybe the old girl's right, So that's what she said. Well, what she said came true.
It did. When you were finally ready to surrender, which is what we always call it.
That was the purpose of God, purposed in Christ. You said, that's why, so much of when are you going to get off the gospel? I always say, let's see, Jesus died for you, he was buried and raised from the dead. The good news, right? Yeah, when are you going to get off of it and get in some deeper truths of the Bible? I said, when are you going to get on it? I said, man, you receive it and the possibility and you take your stand on it.
Yeah.
That means, you're not going to budge.
That's right.
Everything. That's the purpose of the whole thing. We're not getting out of here unless there's a resurrection of the dead. Well, here comes God said, I'll fix it for you. I'll solve physical death for you. I'll fix it for you. You just think about the ramifications of that. It takes a complete fool to say, I don't want to hear about that stuff. You're like, man.
But it's interesting, Dad. Let's take a break. Have y'all noticed how much cameras being everywhere have changed the world? I mean, I guess good and bad. Because, you got now, anytime something happens, somebody's got a camera, a cell phone, or something. Of course, you can't always get the context of what's happening. But from a standpoint of protecting your property or your business, they're amazing. I mean, you're going to see what's happening.
Yeah, I'm 74. I've never taken a picture of somebody in my 74 years.
You've never?
I've never taken a camera and went, let me get a shot of you.
Has anybody ever taken your picture? So one of our sponsors, Simply Safe, they give you the best protection you can have, and that's cameras and sensors, of course, as well. Basically, they have an arsenal that protect every inch of your home as well as outside. You can set it up yourself in about 30 minutes, super easy. No long-term contract, no hidden fees, no installation costs. So it's a really good product.
And I don't even have to be there looking.
No, or taking pictures.
That's right.
You love it. So right now, our listeners get a free home security camera when you purchase a Simply Safe system. And here's how you do it. simplysafe.com/unashamed. You also get 60-day risk-free trial, so there's nothing to lose. simplysafe.com/unashamed. Get your free security camera and protect your home.
I heard it in a bar.
And later, when Smith studied with you, it was interesting because you were so mistrusting of people in general, and certainly preachers or whatever, that it took 3 nights for you to be convinced. I mean, your heart was open finally, but it took 3 nights to convince your intellect and every part of you and your distrust to say, you know what, I see it now.
I had one big glaring problem, and I've seen this a lot in other individuals. I didn't start trusting others as far as I could see them until I could trust me as far as I could see me. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, certainly saying exactly.
I mean, when I could trust me, then I started saying, well, maybe I can trust you because I've been a scoundrel.
Most people project the guilt or the worst part of themselves onto other people. We see it all the time. The Democrats do it every day. Yeah. Anytime they claim the Republicans are doing something, they're doing it. They're projecting it. That's what they do.
Yep.
So Gordon, in my relationship with you guys, because you're from Florida. After I guess you finished school, right? So in '76. Yeah. So you guys got married. I still remember the wedding. It was over at Forsyth. Yeah. And you guys headed back to Florida, I guess, immediately? Or did you go somewhere? Yeah.
Well, we got married in February. We left in July of '75. I went to the 1-year program.
Oh, that's right there. So you wound up in ministry, and so we only really got to see you guys a couple of times a year when you'd come up to visit. My grandparents lived next door to us. So that was really the only time we got to see you. But I always had this real affinity for Jam because she had such an affinity for me. You know, she just really loved me and just exposed me to good spiritual things. And so, I always had that closeness. And then I always loved you because you were funny. I mean, you were sarcastic and a quick wit about you. And sarcasm is one of my love languages, so that's why I love you so much. But I thought it was interesting because eventually you guys moved. Well, you've been here a couple of times in West Monroe. Y'all came for a while.
About 4 years.
What were you doing when y'all were here the first time?
I worked with Robert.
Yeah, that's right. Because that's right. I forget you're cut hair. You've done so many different things. So then you go back to Florida.
I'm doing modeling now.
yeah. That's plus size modeling. But then you wind up in ministry. Had some good experiences, some bad experiences, like all of us who've ever worked for the church. But when you guys came back here the second go around, you guys were working. You worked with us. First you were teaching, but then you worked with us for the church and did a really good job with our college kids, our campus ministry that we're doing over there, and it was really a lot of fun. And all 3 of us were elders together, which was a fun thing for me, to get to have that experiences. So I was just, it's ironic because now Dad is working with that same group, except it's a lot different than when you were there because you had the college kids and all that. But just kind of the way that's all worked out, that God gave us all those opportunities to do it together. And now, of course, Zach's a big part of that too. So you guys are in North Carolina now. So tell our audience what you do there. What's kind of you preach? Do you what are you doing?
I don't do anything.
You're retired.
With Jan suffered a lot with Alzheimer's for about she had it for maybe 6 years. Well, that's when I discovered it, maybe 6 years before she died. But the last year
was terrible.
Oh, it was brutal. I mean, it was a 24-hour commitment on my part, 7 days a week. I got essentially no relief from. I don't like to say it that way because it was my job to serve her, and to
It's
me
still hard, extremely hard.
It was very difficult. Yeah. So she would get disturbed, and I'd say, "Why don't we take a ride?" It's beautiful area, just absolutely gorgeous mountains, and we're riding around, and I see this sign that said Swananoa Christian Church, and I said, "Hey, let's ride down there and see what that's all about." And we drove down and had a playground. The grass was about knee deep. I said, "This place looks dead. I think I'm going to come here on Sunday." For some reason, I just wanted a small group.
So drawn to the.
Yeah, I'm a fixer. So, in the meantime, she had to be hospitalized. She really had a psychotic break, not because it was just because her brain stopped functioning and it was dying off. And so, I had her committed to a hospital for about 10 days. And so the next Sunday, I just showed up about 9:45 and walked into the Sunday school room down in the basement, and we got to talking. There was just a very few people there, and they said, "What did you do for a living before you came here?" And I said, "I was a pastor." And they said, "We're looking for a pastor." I said, "Well, there you go." So I started preaching, and Jan loved them, and it was really cool because sometimes she would have another psychotic break, and she'd say, I want to go see those nice men at the church. I want to go. I said, "Janice, Thursday night, they're not there." You're lying. They're there. Yeah. I said, "Okay, let's go look." So we'd go look, and of course they weren't there. And she'd say, "They're inside. I know they are." I said, They're not. But it was good for me to just have that outlet to preach and teach and to have fellowship with people. But it was also good for her because it gave her a place to belong.
Yeah.
And she felt like those guys loved her, and they did. You know, the people in the church really loved her a lot. So
I think it's just my opinion, but I think because of your upbringing you mentioned, and like all of us, everything kind of our experiences drive us, and because you're really good at preaching grace and just the opposite of everything you said earlier, that how you grew up, and I grew up the same way.
Keep talking, Al, while I kill this fly.
Yeah, you get that thing.
I think this is the same fly that landed on Mike Pence's head.
I bet he won't have the guts to do that again.
Old Gordon started talking, and the flies started appearing.
Yeah.
Remember the fly that little Mike Pence said? I think this is the same one. He's now.
I kept tapping the TV, make it go away.
Get it off of him. We're the only. By the way, I think we're probably the only podcast in America that has an interruption in their podcast to kill flies.
I've never heard of it.
Well, have you ever heard of that?
If they saw
I bet Joe Rogan's not killing flies on his.
If they saw all these squirrels and deer and ducks coming through here,
Well, there was a couple of deer out here from a couple of people that killed them just yesterday. They were right outside this door.
Just hanging out.
Yeah, so you're probably right. I didn't think about that. This is a little bit of a draw for that. So if we stop to kill flies, just go with the fly.
A lot of people think we're faking like we're living out on the edge of the woods here.
Oh, no, there's no fake. It's not fake.
Yeah, because Gordon lived here. You can speak to it, right?
It's a nightmare.
I always say that Louisiana is a place not fit for human habitation, and yet we live here. So I don't know what that says. Something about us.
20 feet behind this building is a plethora of intertwined serpents with venom just dripping from their fangs,
and they're crawling over alligators that are trying to get in there. Yeah, we just had Anna Phelan on, and they just.
How many snakes do you kill in your yard when you live next to me?
You know what's odd? I did not kill king snakes, and I saw a lot of those.
Oh yeah.
I rarely killed those water snakes. I only killed 3 cottonmouths and that one rattlesnake right before I moved.
Yeah.
4 snakes in 14 years.
Not
poisonous.
Bad.
That's not bad at all.
The reason you weren't having to kill them was them king snakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I left the king snakes alone.
And first time I saw a king snake.
You're a wise man.
I saw a king snake. We were playing baseball down there by the river when I was a kid, and I saw a copperhead, so I went and grabbed something to go kill him, because Dad trained as well. And I was looking to go up the snake to find the head of the snake, and about halfway up, a king snake had eaten half the copperhead.
Yeah.
And then I just said, "All right, we're friends. This guy here, he's on our side."
Oh yeah, there was one out behind my house.
That's how they kill them. They swallow them whole.
Oh,
yeah,
they choke them first.
Yeah.
But Jan said, kill him," and I said, "Oh no, come here." And I got on this, YouTube wasn't very old. I got on and said, king snake eating rattlesnake, and I showed her a video. She said, "Good grief, you better leave him alone." I said, "Oh yeah,
He's there.
I'm not touching the king
He's there
snake."
for him. Let's take another break. So one of the things, Gordon, that you're doing now is you've been working with Lisa and I on our blog, and also helping out with Dad's newsletters as well. Gordon is an excellent writer, by the way, among his many talents. And that's Al and LisaRobertson.com, by the way. Kind of be sure we put that on the screen. And we're trying to just do information to help people. We talk about pro-life a lot. We talk about marriage. We talk about forgiveness and brokenness. And, again, all those things that have helped our life, so we want to try to help.
And everything's centered on the gospel.
Everything.
Every answer.
And which is really the core of the podcast and everything else we're doing. So I want to talk about in our last few minutes together a project that we're just starting to work on, and it's Dad's new book. And so we're just early in the process. We got a lot of different ideas floating around, but one of the ones we've talked about is the idea about cancel culture, because that's a big thing now. Which basically, as most of you know, you speak out on something or you say something that somebody doesn't like, and then you've got this group of these hordes on social media, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. They try to cancel you. So they basically try to ruin you and silence you. I mean, that's the way it's working now, and it's just rampant. And most all of it's on the left. It's just the way they function. Because at one time, liberals were the bastions of free speech. Remember that? I mean, you should be able to say anything. There's no, you shouldn't, and it was always aimed at conservatives at the time, and you can't clamp us down. And now, just in a short, 15 or 20 years, it's completely come full circle. And now they're the ones trying to shut any free speech down that they don't like. You can't say it. With the big tech. I've been censored 3 times this week on Twitter. When I tried to retweet something, a little thing comes up on the thing that says, well, you've got to do more research before you need to. And I was just reading this. I was like, are you kidding me? I mean, I'm looking at a video. I can't send it out on your platform until I go and then,
I got censored on Facebook when Joe Biden said he was running against George. You remember that?
Yeah.
And his wife leans over and she says, Trump.
Yeah, you can see her.
So I posted, all I did was post the video.
Yeah.
And then the next hour, there's a little disclaimer.
Yeah.
This is taken out of context. And I'm going, taken out of context, his wife is saying, it's not George, it's Trump.
Right.
I didn't take anything out of context. I just showed the video.
Yeah.
So
it's something that happened, that everybody
really
saw.
happened.
Yeah, I'm saying just. What is?
I'm not. It is in its entire context.
So that's what they're doing now, Dad, because you don't know, because you're not on social media. So basically,
he's on there.
You've got somebody. There's some algorithm that alerts somebody somewhere in a place, and then they're going to make a decision. Of course, the somebodies every time seem to be going after conservatives. You don't ever see. I've never heard anybody complain on the left about being told this. So you just want to express a thought or show a video like Gordon's talking about, and you got somebody in a room that says, nope, we're the fact checkers.
Yep.
That's what they call
the
themselves.
ones who are canceling their neighbors are their men of renown from back in the past. The people who are doing that, they've already been canceled.
Yeah.
They're the canceled ones.
That's right.
There's no hope. They have no. To peaceably assemble is what they have the right. But to do what they're doing, there's nothing peaceable about that.
No. And if something's mostly peaceful, that's like being mostly
when
pregnant.
You're tearing down statues for people that lived in the past, and for whatever reason they wanted to remember them. Some of them are founding fathers. I mean, statues of priests, statues.
Frederick Douglass.
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
What about the one who freed the slave?
When you're canceling them out, that's a sure sign that you've already been canceled by the Almighty.
So that's kind of at the heart of kind of where we're going on a biblical view of cancel, what's been canceled and what hasn't, right? How would you kind of define sort of our thinking on kind of where we're going?
Okay, so the best.
We're we're just sharing with you guys early in the process. So
if you got any input.
Yeah, if you got any input, let us know.
We're fine with that. So the best example is when GQ came to interview you, 2014, with the Duck Dynasty, whatever
Correct.
it was.
Yep, 2014.
And he asked him what the definition of sin was, and you remember you quoted 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse I don't know, 8,
9
10,
and 10.
10.
9
So in that list, you've got the greedy, the swindler, the homosexual offender, the sexually immoral. It's just a list. And the as soon as the magazine hit the shelves, which was a Wednesday, I believe, the outcry against you for being homophobic it dominated every news cycle.
That was one of the first ones to the attempt to cancel.
Right. He was canceled before cancel culture became cancel culture.
That's right. This is exactly
so
right.
before it had a name, that's what they did to him.
That's right.
So, of course, he's made the point, and I think we'll make this in the book, is that I got canceled for simply quoting a Bible verse.
That's right.
And they didn't know.
Which, by the way,
they didn't know it was a Bible
that's
verse.
right.
They thought it was your opinion.
It took 3 days because, Dad wasn't just book, chapter, verse. He's just quoting scripture, which he does a
Verbatim.
lot. Verbatim. And so it took the cable news people,
the fact checkers,
3 days to even realize you were quoting a verse.
Somebody finally called them and said, it's a Bible verse.
You dummies.
They said, that's in the Bible.
Even our defenders back then, it was Bill O'Reilly and those guys. They were like, I mean, this guy does have some crazy views. Listen to what he said, and he's literally quoting a Bible verse.
They had some priest, Catholic preach, and he said, well, what do you expect, some redneck down there? I mean, he didn't know it was a Bible verse either. And he said, what are you expecting to say, But actually, the front part of that verse said, do not be deceived.
Yeah.
Don't be deceived.
Right.
Neither the sexually immoral, the idolaters, the adulterers, the male prostitutes, the homosexual offenders, the thieves, greedy, drunkards, slanderers, swindlers, they won't inherit the kingdom of God.
And you said then, and such were some of you.
Yeah,
but
right.
you were
That's
washed.
who you were.
You used to be
I was giving them the good news with it, but They didn't read the second part.
Somehow I think they had it in their mind. Good news was not going to be part of this story. Let's take one last break.
But they sure rode me hard for about the news media for about 6 months. They would come to Whites Ferry Road, and they said, "Can we have an interview?" They'd stick a mic up in my face. I said, "Well, sure you can." I said, "I'll be giving it right upstairs."
Got a press conference.
So I would
it's also called a Bible class.
I would get them all up in there, and they're hemmed
hammer
up
the gospel.
with all their equipment. They can't get out of there, and I'm just hammering away. I said, "Hey, put that on TV." By the way, one of them, I finally, she said, "I like you, Mr. Robertson." I said, "Well, you came, though, because you heard that I was a mean old man, right?" And she said, "That's what I thought." I said, "Do I seem like a hater to you?" And she said, "You do not." I said, "Put that on TV."
Yeah.
I said,
Tell it.
I said, "You got the cameraman with you?" I said, "Run it. Yeah. Run that."
Wouldn't do it.
Wouldn't do it.
The only person that really told the whole story from your Bible class press conferences was somebody from London.
Yeah.
London, England.
London, England.
Yeah.
And they told the whole thing. It was like, here's what the guy had to say. He seemed pretty good to me. I mean, like, this guy was genuinely...
He actually took up for us.
He did. It was the only news outlet that actually
Yeah.
He came over here from London, England to get the dirt on me.
He did. It was one of those London tabloid types.
That's why it's best, Al, give him the dirt on the front end.
Yeah.
Just say, "Look,
I've never had anybody come from Balkanville to get the dirt on me, so that's 5 miles away.
So you're right. We kind of put TMZ out of business in terms of the Robertsons because you just tell your own stuff. You don't have to if you're not sitting around on a time bomb. If you just go ahead and detonate it.
That's
You
right.
been drunk? Yep. You been high? Yep. You been laid? Yep.
I knew it was coming.
Yeah. We call it the big three.
So when I imitate Phil, that's what I do. I mean, everybody's trying to get drunk, get high, get laid. They go, yeah, that sounds like him.
So one of the verses that I like, because we're toying around with calling it Uncanceled, because basically they claim even to this day, Dad. I read an article recently, just a random piece that comes out in the Hollywood Reporter about, let's remember why we hate this guy. It wasn't even targeting anything new you're doing. It was just like all the old stuff.
They wanted to remember me so they could hate me
That's
some
right.
more.
Yes. Don't forget, this guy we cancel. So I thought it was interesting that they're having to remind their people that we cancel the guy. So in their mindset, they canceled you. But in truth, in reality, they didn't cancel anything. The show totally reversed itself. You were on indefinite hiatus, which would
For
last
24 hours.
9 days.
Well, they were trying to. They said we actually didn't fire you if you read
The
read
fine
it
print.
carefully. I said, did I have a bellyache? Haven't been canceled or run off? I said, y'all ever hear me bell? Did I call you up? They said, no, sir. You didn't say a word. I said, I don't mind. I said, I don't care if y'all laid it on me. They said, well, if you read it real carefully, it says we put you on a what do you call it?
Indefinite.
Yeah, an indefinite hiatus. I said, I looked up hiatus in the Bible, and it said not part of the program. No longer a part of the program.
So they didn't. But then they reversed course. The only thing the family said was that we're not going to do the show unless Dad's on the show. So we're basically saying we're with Phil.
And at that time, it was at its height.
Oh, it was that. And we talked about in the last. It was the fourth season, which it was the. I mean, you're talking millions.
11 million.
Yeah. You're talking about millions and millions of people. The demo is out the roof.
Yeah, a lot of our, the one we had contracts with, the various companies, it probably cost us about $10 million.
Yeah.
We lost all I had to do was cave in and say, "Oh, you're right. It's not a sin,
or us not back you." But what's interesting is that was in 2014. Again, ahead of the cancel curve. I would be willing to say they would definitely cancel us today. Like, it's gotten so far now.
Oh, yeah.
Because one little statement somebody, but who was it?
By the way, for all the guys and gals that practice homosexual behavior and the ones that are saved now, and it's great work going on inside that community.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And again,
we've converted quite a few,
and we were we were blamed or said that we were against this specific group of people. We preach truth, marriage, and immorality about any situation. I mean, in our church,
it's not like if
a man and woman, just like the one I just married, they've been living together 10 years, they were convicted because of what we say on this podcast that this is not right. And so the girlfriend, tells and they've been together a long time, but she tells him, "No, you go sleep on the couch." Well, 2 years later, they come down here, and I married him. I said, "Boy, you're going to be excited because you can get off the couch now. You're back in the good graces."
He slept on the couch for 2 years?
2 years. Yeah, no sex.
He was a little slow.
And I said, y'all should have came 2 years ago. But my point is, when it comes to immorality, anything outside of a husband and wife, the way God designed us to have sex with your wife or your husband and keep it there. And as you said many times, no disease, all these bad things that happen, none of that's there.
That's correct.
That's what we teach. And so that applies to anything that's not that.
Well, and as an outsider, and I am, no matter how hard I've tried and to be a part of the Robertson family, I know that I'll never really fit in.
You can just tell when you walk by.
I'm not from around here.
You ain't from around here.
Well, Gordon, just like Dad says, the good thing for you is because you're weird, but the good thing for you is that around here, weird is in.
Yeah, that's true. So, just as I love teasing Phil and joking around about the family, and even Jan, I know she doesn't mind because I did it when she was alive and she laughed at it, but I tell stories on her all the time. But just in all seriousness, when I come into your house and I see lesbians and gay men and all these other people that are listed in that verse, and there's
two people that are living,
two people that are shacking up, whatever,
right, whatever.
There's no limit, and I see you sitting there, not only sharing the scriptures with them, sharing the gospel with them. You're feeding them a fine meal like we had a while ago, and that was good. Yeah. The good shrimp etouffee, it was awesome. But your hospitality toward people, regardless of where they are in their life, I know, no matter what these people in cancel culture say about you, I know that you love the very people that they say they're trying to defend. You love them deeply.
Yep. Just show them what God says.
Just what Jesus said. I love sinners. That's why I came here.
Yeah.
I'd come here to cancel people. I came here to do something. So I want to read you this verse as we're about out of time, from Colossians 2:13 through 15, because I really think this will be kind of the heart of what we get to in this book, if this is the direction we go. When you were dead in your sins and in the uncircumcision of your flesh, because he's been talking about circumcision in the context, God made you alive with Christ. He forgave us all our sins, having canceled, here's God's cancel culture for us, having canceled the charge of our legal indebtedness, which stood against us and condemned us. He has taken it away, nailed it to the cross. And having disarmed the powers and authorities, he made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross.
Thank God he did it.
Yeah.
Woo! And I mean, that really
I want him to cancel me.
That's right. We want to be
And then whatever they do, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Right.
That night I came in, I was all excited because I heard about it. I was in town. I came out here real fast and I said, "Hey, Phil, if you don't cave in on this, you're going to have a plow." He interrupted me. He said, "Cave in? This is the happiest day of my life. What are you talking about?" You remember saying that?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was excited because he knew he had a platform now, and he also was excited because he knew he was going to suffer
It helped
for the sake of Christ.
It helped convert many.
But you know what's funny is to show you, though, about this article I told you about, I just read within the last year, people just lie. So in the article at the end of it says, even though he apologized,
Yeah.
it said, even though he apologized, and then it went on. I was just screaming at my computer screen. I was like, he never apologized for quoting a Bible verse. But now they just add that. They're like, even though he apologized, we know this, this, and this, and this. And I just thought, that's what they do.
What
you know
magazine
what?
was that?
Hollywood Reporter.
Really?
Yeah, that's what it said. So,
But
Fake news.
Just think of it, Hollywood reporter.
yeah, doesn't go with Dad very good. Fake news.
Yeah.
Gordon, it's been great to have you.
Yeah, it's been good
That was a
being here.
quick 48 minutes, but I'm glad you came. I'm excited about this project. And so, audience, be sure to be praying about this because we always want to put stuff out that's relevant but also biblical. That's the idea behind this. Don't forget Jesus Politics, if you hadn't picked up a copy, or Theft of America. So every book we sell helps us write more books in the future. So be sure and support that and grab one of those. Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.